that's what this recovery community is about, is helping each other, picking each other up. And, like I say, my very first meeting, I knew that instantly. I was like, I'm home.
Welcome back to the Level Up Life, Muscle and Mindset Mastery. I'm your host, Adam. Thank you again for everyone who watches from the beginning all the way till the end. We appreciate you guys. Really thank you for everyone who makes this possible by watching. So, of course, I got Waz with me. We got a special guest today. Some of you may know. In my book, he's a legend. Will Sirrine, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Grateful to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to elaborate on why you're a legend, one day is significant in terms of sobriety and recovery. And stacking days together is significant. When you stack decades and you have significant clean time, I consider you a legend for that. Yeah. And for me, just when I came into recovery, knowing there were people like you, and there's many like you who have years, decades, it gave me hope, like, oh, I can make it that far if he did.
Yeah.
Everybody can, right?
Yeah. Especially if I did.
Right. Well, and then that's it. It's possible. If one person can do it, everybody can do it.
Yeah.
It's how bad do you want it?
Yep.
So I want to dive into your story a little bit.
Okay.
Let our viewers learn who you are. Okay. So start at the beginning.
At the beginning.
And we'll hone this into more of when the substance use happened.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just I'm a local. I've been a local my entire life. Let's see, grew up over on Hillgrove Street and Wilmington Street, if you guys know Midland at all. Chestnut Hill. I had 4 older siblings, 1 younger sibling. One of the things that happened to me, I was a really big kid. I looked older. So I tended to hang out with my older siblings and their friends, and so, the first time I remember getting drunk was at a block party. Back in the day, we used to have block parties, and all the neighbors would gather for them, and I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was doing it all the time, obviously, but my mom and dad's friends thought it was funny. I was walking up to the keg and pouring myself a beer, and because back in that day it wasn't that big of a deal, but anyhow, fast forward to 6th grade, I had a friend that was smoking pot, and we'd go out on the playground and into the woods and smoke pot when we were in 6th grade, and then of course by the time junior high came, it was pretty constant, I got in some pretty big trouble. I was selling pot at school at Northeast, and last day of school in 8th grade, I got busted. Got caught by the janitor in the bathroom. So I started to kind of get this. What do you want to call it? You say legend status, but it was obviously it wasn't legend status, but I had this. People kind of figured out what I was, or who they thought I was. Let's put it that way. And I just kind of rolled with it. I like playing sports, but I also like the attention that I got from being one of those kids, that, had the wine bottles in the woods, and we'd go out there at lunch and drink and get high, and it was pretty much every day until I had gotten caught in 8th grade. And then they took my sports away from me. They were like, you can't play sports next year. So that straightened me up for a minute, until, I could get away with it again,
Right.
So, but I was basically, I would say, it's definitely drinking and smoking pot like every day for quite some time. And then starting in college, it just continued, and
Progressed.
yeah. And I got into the harder stuff in college, and just, my whole life was centered around drinking and getting high. And I really didn't do a whole lot more than that. I was, I was a pretty good athlete, but I just, really didn't play that many sports, because I just couldn't get my shit together to do it, and so I just, and I was lazy and I didn't want to do it. I was getting high and that was my life, and then, in college, the same thing, didn't graduate, stayed there for 4 years, just, and of course to support my habit, I got into dealing, so there was that, and it was fairly large, it got me in a, it got, in the end, it got me in more trouble, obviously. What brought me to, so after college, I went out to California, basically doing the same thing, came back to the Midland area. I was 25 years old, and they had been wanting me for, the police had been wanting me for quite some time. And they finally, were able to get me through another person, let's put it that way. And so I got busted. It was in September of 85. And
I was like 6 months old.
Yeah.
That's why you're a legend.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. With the money in the pot, and I was facing some pretty significant time, 2 to 4 years. And so from September 85 all the way to June of 86, nothing happened with my trial, really. And, I did start going to meetings.
Yeah.
In September of 85. So this is kind of a funny story. After I get busted, I'm like, I had a friend that was in the program, and so I knew that I could go to a meeting if I wanted to, but I just wasn't ready. I was just like, I'm not ready, I just got busted. It's not that big of a deal,
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that, okay, I can just drink. And so I go with a bunch of buddies down to my stomping grounds in Lansing, and I start drinking on a Friday night, and I don't remember anything. I'm in a total blackout. The phone rings. I get in the morning, I get up, and it's my dad. He's asking me, why I'm not at work, because I was working for him. And I realized it was Monday morning. So I had been on a blackout from Friday night until Monday morning. And I had this moment of clarity where it was like, damn, I got a problem. And so anyhow, I immediately, after I hung up the phone with my dad, because I told my dad, I said, I'm not coming in, and called my buddy, and I went to my first meeting, Yeah, and then, even after that, it wasn't, I still, wasn't sure that I wanted it. And I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And during this whole time,
I think that's a common theme for a lot of people, like that. And just listening to the story, it's like, starts off just this little bit experimenting, playing around, young age, and then it kind of progresses over the years until it gets to a point where it becomes a problem. And then it's kind of that for a lot of people. I know people that are kind of in and out, like they want it, but they're not ready to let go of this lifestyle, and they're kind of in that in between.
Yep.
Yeah. The letting go and admitting you have a problem too, right?
That's
when it's, we'll justify a million different ways. And we've had few conversations like that, but you will justify where it's like, it's just this, right? It's just pot. Okay, well, if I wasn't dealing, right?
It wouldn't have caused problems.
It wouldn't have been okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I had how much money I could have made dealing, but I only dealt pot so I could smoke pot. And the end of I quit purposely. I don't remember why, till I got talked back into it. And I got a pound, and it's like, oh, that's cool. This is before the cell phones. Nobody knows Dave's selling. So I bought a pound of weed. I smoked a pound of weed, and that was the end of my dealing. I'm like, that was not money I had to spend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that in and out for me was like 10 years, I feel like, before I finally was like, wow, I need to change.
I had actually, when I got in trouble in 8th grade, they had sent me into counseling, and so I was actually had a counselor that was in recovery at that time. I can't remember the guy's name, but I can kind of picture him. So that was all the way, that happened, and then I continued. So I would have been 14, and I continued to use till I was 26.
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't actively going in and out. But I had some knowledge. I didn't know anything about 12-step recovery, but I had some knowledge, about, they tried to talk to me about, well, why do you think you use?
Mm-hmm. The going back to the rationalizations, like you said, I'm not selling, or if I wasn't selling, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble. For me, it was like, well, opiates are the only thing that causes me legal issues. I can still drink, or I can still smoke, and I justified that until I created legal issues with those. And then I'm like, well, I need, for me, and maintenance assisted therapy has its place for people, but in my specific situation, I used it as I deferred to that when I was sick. Mm-hmm. And I would use that also to trade with my dope man. Mm-hmm. So I was like, hey, I got 3 Suboxone strips for whatever, a pack, So I was using my maintenance assisted therapy as a way to get my drug of choice. Okay. So in a way to alleviate the withdrawals when I was getting sick. Yeah. So, I mean, that I experimented with that until it was just like, at the end of that 10 years, it was just like, well, I think I'm an alcoholic. I think I'm, if I identify with one specific substance, and it was just like, I'm an addict.
Yeah.
And I need help. I can't go out and use anything and control myself because I just want more and more and more until this becomes not enough. And then I level up, no pun intended. I level up what drug I'm using. I just keep going until.
Yeah.
So I think in the if you simplify it down for everyone, I think there's an overarching theme that we all go through where it's like, I can manage this, or maybe it's not this. Maybe I can do this substance and not this substance. And some people can do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of them.
And honestly, if I wouldn't have gone to that meeting, if I wouldn't have picked that phone up and said, hey, can you take me to a meeting? I need help. Because immediately I knew, I was like, even though I didn't stay clean after that, I knew that this is, because I bawled like, at that first meeting. I couldn't even talk. I was trembling and bawling so much, and everybody was hugging me and patting me on the shoulder, which felt really great, because it was the first time in a long time that I felt like I belonged someplace. Mm-hmm. Even though it was, at the time, I didn't think it was a very great place to be, crying in front of a bunch of strangers, because that's not me. I hold those emotions in, until they come out, and a lot of times in a wrong way,
right?
And
it's so cool though when you get around a group of people that all have, similar experiences.
Yeah.
When you can just relate to, like, I don't know the details, but I know the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that simplified version, and you were one of the people that was super welcoming to me, kind, and just, it doesn't matter if you have 1 day, 30 days, 30 years, 40 years, it doesn't matter. How you treat other people really can make them, when they're walking in or expressing themselves, how that can make them feel makes a huge difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
And absolutely. Yep.
It's how much of the benefit, right? The little conversations. And, we've had a handful about addiction and use and everything, but a lot of them were, we've been talking music and sports and in that fishing and all that type of stuff, but it's, from so many years and that position of strength. And then you have people that are new and early in recovery, that it's that same inspiration where it's like, oh man, that's a long time. I want to get to that point. But seeing how full and how strong somebody is, it's like they're going to make it. Yep. They are going to get out because they are just filled with it. And
they're locked in.
That is, because I need that all the time. And I don't really ever really thinking about using. Me and Greg were talking just a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, it's just the weirdest things. Like, not ever like a drunk, messed up moment, but putzing down the 2-track, just having a beer in the console, right? Like, man, that came up, I don't know, a month ago or so when I was road tripping with the wife, and I'm like, I haven't had a craving to drink in a long time, but that one popped in, and it has nothing to do with getting drunk. Just having that beer as I'm putzing, counting deer, and watching the wildlife. And he talked about that, and I don't have any of them thoughts of using, but it's them inspirations and the sources of strength where, so much. I wasn't ready for years and years to get sober.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time accepting that I had a problem. And then, even now looking back, it's like, okay, yeah, I was this age to this age, I was real bad. And then here I'm doing the dad thing, and now I was kind of bad. And then spike and so many of these things were, did I have a problem? What was the extent? Was I alcoholic? Was I drunk? Did I have just, all these poor decisions, and it don't matter. Because like you said, some people could do it. There's ways where, I'm 13 years where I could have a beer watching the game with my dad. Confident in that. But what happens when all of a sudden this other person that I used to party with, oh man, I seen you have a beer, like, yeah, come on. What happens when I cross that line? When it's like, oh, let's do a shot. I'm throwing away everything and all that source of strength.
Yep.
I don't give two shits about how many numbers and what I can do in the gym. But it's that mental strength of, I don't need to do this. Yeah, I know where this road leads.
Makes me think of boundaries. So, like, you start compromising that boundaries. And in your journey, did you ever have, like, boundaries you set for yourself that you compromised throughout? Like, and I'll give you an example. For me, it was when I was young, I was like, I'm never going to smoke cigarettes because I don't that was my first compromise.
Yeah.
I tried a cigarette. Then it was, well, I'm never going to do drugs or drink. And then I compromised that. And then before I knew it, you know, I was reflecting back, and I'm like, my original line in the sand that I drew was like a mile back there, and now I got a dart in my arm and I'm passing out.
Yep.
And it's just like, how did I get here? So do you have...
Oh yeah, no. I remember distinctly. You know, this would have been like, well, some of my buddies in elementary school were smoking, you know, during recess. You know, and I remember distinctly saying to someone else, I can't remember who it was, I'm never going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then a month later, I was doing, you know, hanging out with those guys. You know.
Yeah.
And I continued to do that, you know, all the way to the end, you know, like I didn't get around to telling you about my last, you know, when I went to my first meeting, and then, so I went to the first meeting in September, and I finally stopped everything completely on June 8th, 1986. So I was 9 months getting to that point, you know, and I blame it like on the stress of the legal thing coming up, you know, and I just could, you know, I couldn't keep my mind off of that, and I was, you know, afraid, you know, big time, you know, and I ended up giving a dirty screen, and the probation officer turned me into Midland County, and so I had another hearing where they were going to figure out if they were going to continue on with my case. And when I got into the courtroom, I don't know if I'm supposed to name the judge or not, use his name. I don't think he's alive anymore, but Klulo was a judge at the time, and he saw that I had given this dirty screen. So even back then, the courts were kind of sympathetic, because he looked at this and he said, I just thought I was going to go away at that moment, and that was going to be that. And he looked at it and said, this young man needs to go to treatment. So I walk out of the courtroom and I go right into treatment, and that was that. I stayed clean after that, you know, because it was, to me, it was the last chance that they were going to give me, and it probably was, you know. Doesn't mean that I didn't spend some time, because, you know, when I got out of treatment, I immediately went, you know, into the system, you know. But at least when I went away, I had 3 weeks clean, you know.
My interesting fact here, my first encounter with the circuit court system here in Midland was with Judge Klulo.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
He's my first sentencing
So
judge. So
this was the old man, because there was the son too. There was.
I'm not sure. Paul.
Yeah.
I think it's Paul Klulo.
Yeah, that might have been the old man. Yeah. I'm thinking his first name was Paul. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
No.
So I actually got to see him at Rotary at one point, and I just went up and shook his hand and told him, you know, hey, I was in your courtroom and
Yeah.
turned my life around. Just want to let you know.
That's so cool.
They
Yeah.
do. Like, obviously, they don't want to send people away.
Yeah.
I think in a majority, you talk to judges, they're good humans. They want, and I see it on like Midland Complains and all these websites. And there's like a Midland Daily News article about sentencings, and they're like, you know, like, why did the judge only give this individual that much time? And I think people don't realize that judges are bound to like guidelines for sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
It's prior record variable, current offense variable, and it maps it on this chart, which gives them guidelines to sentence between. Now, if they go over or under that, then it can be questioned, like, why are they outside of the guidelines? And this is like, from my understanding, and any lawyers out there, correct me if I'm wrong, they can be by the bar. If they're continuously sentencing outside of guidelines, they can actually be disbarred.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's conduct and how they monitor that type of stuff. But Clulo was fair with me. All my experiences with judges, they've been within my guidelines. You know, like that's a deeper question that on this show I want to get into more. Is like what sentencing guidelines need to be addressed, because like how many people are in prison for pot still, and pot's legal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we looking at like how our legal system is changing, or our society is changing, but our legal system is not catching up with it?
Yeah.
Talked with Amir Hassan about like AI stuff. There could be a video of the three of us. AI has the potential to make a video of the three of us walking into Live Oak when we're actually recording right here.
Yeah.
So what protections do we have legally for that? But that's my little sidebar. We'll get back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you went through your court process, and you started a business since you're.
Well, no, I was working for the family business, and that my dad had started, and then my brother and I took that over.
Okay.
Yeah. And my dad was still trying to remember when I was a good probably 10 years clean when he turned that over to my brother and I. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Yep. And just,
They had to have been pretty proud when you made that turn.
Yeah. I think so. You know, it's funny. He was always. My parents were great. You know, and my family's a good family. I mean, no major issues there. I know my mom and dad actually had severely alcoholic fathers, so they had to deal with it. But it kind of skipped a generation because of what they went through. They tried to keep that from us. I mean, they drank, socially, but it wasn't like blasting, which was, it's a cool way to be brought up, and my dad was really supportive. He was, obviously if you let me work with him, it was like, I hope this kid gets his shit together. Oops.
You're good.
So that, very supportive. And then also, working with my brother was, and on the way over here, I was thinking about, he passed away 4 years ago, and I was thinking about how we kind of complemented each other. I'm a good math guy, but he was even a more brilliant math mind, but socially he was a little awkward, so I picked up the social part a little bit more, and then of course when I would have something that I couldn't figure out, I'd hand it to him, and in 30 seconds he'd go, "Oh, well, you just do this,"
Fix it for you.
Yeah. But yeah, no, had the a real estate appraisal business, and God, I'm trying to think. So my dad started that in 1978, and then when my brother passed away, I retired at that same time. So about almost 4 years ago, we closed that down, and so. But it was a great business, and a great livelihood, and I think we were pretty well respected in the community, and
And I think it's important to highlight, like, anybody meets you now, they're not going to be like, "Oh, he's an addict for sure." Like you can't just like the people in recovery. There's not like a sign that says, "Oh, they were an addict," or So I think that's important because there's a lot of stigma around substance.
Yeah, there was.
And it's less now because of people like you who have lived openly about it and paved the way, because I'm sure, like, for me, it's not, I just live out in the open with it. And for people who paved the way, I'm sure it was much more challenging. There was a lot more judgment passed. There was that type of stuff. But as a society, we're kind of shifting away from that, where people tell me today, when I'm like, yeah, I was, heroin addict. I was down at my worst. I was 103 pounds. Mm-hmm. I'm 190 now. Okay. So to kind of visualize that difference.
I'm giving you the side.
220.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I went to jail in 2016, I was 143 pounds. Inside joke about weight. Anyway, 143 pounds.
Yeah.
So, people see me now and they're like, there's no way. But I just highlight, like, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
There's millions of us.
Yeah.
Walking around the
long
United
time
States.
ago, everything was taboo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if it was just alcohol, right? Whether it was your mom or your dad or your child, right? It was like leprosy. You don't talk about it. You don't want people to know, type. And now you can be more open about it. And there is that stuff. But I know, I mean, even my oldest sisters, with my parents, where I'm like, trying to be quiet about it. Like, these people that you're trying to hide it from all love you guys, and they love her. Maybe somebody can get through.
Yep.
But for years and years, society viewed all that stuff far differently.
Yeah. I still, to this day, I mean, when all that went down in the very beginning, of course, I was in the newspaper. Now it would be, online. But I was. Yeah, I felt like everybody was looking at me when I don't think that was true, but I felt like everybody was looking at me and watching me, and I definitely had something to prove, and really to society. There wasn't anything that I could do about what I had done, but the only thing I could do was to show people that I meant what I was saying, as far as, recovering, doing the recovery thing.
It could take a long time too.
Yeah. But I've spent a lot of time, I still, because of the way it was when I came in, I still have a hard time. This was freaking me out.
Yeah.
I was like, well, now everybody's going to know. I was like, everybody knows. I've been doing this for almost 40 years. Yeah. Everybody knows, and anybody who knows who I am, who knows me. Now, there might be a few people that will be surprised that I'm sitting here talking about that. But now they know, and it's not, and I got to remember, it's not a tragic thing. I mean, this addict used because he didn't want to feel something.
Same here.
And today when I feel awkward or I'm having a bad morning or, I can usually like get through it by either picking up the phone and talking to somebody or, my wife's in recovery. I should not have told everybody that,
right.
but I can talk to her, I can open a book and do some readings, that's what this recovery community is about, is helping each other, picking each other up. And, like I say, my very first meeting, I knew that instantly. I was like, I'm home, and I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
I remember walking in to my first meeting out of treatment here, and I just spoke to, I was just talking about it on an episode. I can't remember who we had on then, but I remember walking in. It was a church, Saginaw Road, Saturday morning. walk in there, and one of the biggest things is the community aspect. Because when I walked in, there were people I knew from high school. There were people that I knew from active addiction. There were people that I've known, you know, through other associates that were like, Adam, glad you're here, man. They just came, hugged me, and I was like, you know, this is pretty cool. Like, I didn't know he would make it out of this, and this guy's here, and I didn't think he'd make it out.
He was far worse than me.
Yeah. I started the measuring stick. Well, no, and then I'm like, you know, these guys are doing it. I think I can. I started really developing confidence because I had doubts early in recovery, and just there's a ton of us that just, you know, may not be public about it, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
Everybody gets their own choice, and I just think it's wonderful that there is so many of us, and there's a huge network that we can tap into for support.
Yep.
Now let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, Pine Haven Assisted Living. At Pine Haven Assisted Living, they believe in making every resident feel at home. Nestled in the peaceful countryside of Hemlock, Michigan, they offer compassionate care in a family-like environment where residents can enjoy independence with the support they need. Registered nurse-owned and operated, their team provides personalized care, home-cooked meals, and a range of activities to ensure your loved ones continue to live a fulfilling life. They also have alpacas and llamas on site to enrich the lives of their residents. Experience the warmth and comfort of Pine Haven. Call them today at 989-295-6632. That's 989-295-6632. Or you can visit them on their website at pinehavenassistedliving.com. That's pinehavenassistedliving.com for more information. Now, back to the Level Up Life.
Yep.
No, my approach with, and this is my logic, maybe it's addict logic or something, but I think to myself and I'm like, you know, I'm pretty public, open about my stuff. Ask Midland, talk about it on here. This is on the internet forever. But my logic is that everybody that watches this, Josh back there, behind the lens here, everybody I interact with that knows, hey, this is my past, they become part of my safety net.
Mm-hmm.
So if, you know, let's say I'm out at having dinner at the Boulevard or, you know, out somewhere, and I got Slick start talking like, you can have a beer, Adam. Then all of a sudden, Slick gets really convincing up there. You know, maybe we never know. Maybe I just had a family member pass away, and I look over, and I see this individual that knows and part of my support network. That all of a sudden becomes a deterrent for me.
Right. Yep.
And all of a sudden, they look over at me, and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna have that beer.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
the more people that know, the better.
Yep. Yep.
In my
Absolutely.
opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I guess I want to know more about like when back in the 90s there was more stigma about it.
Well, yeah. You know, and I, got clean in mid 80s.
Yeah.
You know, and there was
80s, 90s.
Yeah. There was. In my mind, there was. You know, they didn't have these programs. You know that you guys have been talking to me about. You know, the recovery pod and things like that.
The specialty
they
courts.
didn't even. They were where I was located in the system. They didn't even have meetings coming in. You know. And of course, everybody was using around me, you know, which was, it was difficult, but, so there was that was going on. Yeah, I just I just think when things things that the thing that happened to me, you get busted and everybody's like, yeah, there's stigma, that guy's a piece of whatever, and that's kind of how it felt. Now, I also believe because I did get like that judge, hey, this guy needs to go to treatment, before I go to prison,
Right.
which was, that blew my mind. Obviously he cared, but the things that the recovery pod wasn't in place, So I really believe that the law really wanted things like that in place. They just hadn't started,
It's a slow process.
Yeah, yeah, changing. Oh, you're a criminal from, oh, you're an addict that wants to get clean and wants to better themselves. Because there is a big difference between, oh, you're a criminal. Because anybody that's gone to jail, for shoplifting or stealing or whatever, usually there's a reason behind it.
Underlying.
Yeah.
Maybe not even substance use disorder, but maybe a mental health condition.
Right.
That is associated with the behavior.
Yep. And family situations, and I didn't have that, but boy, I tell you, in this, going to meetings and stuff like that, there's a lot of times that I've just sat and cried when somebody talked about their family situation. I'm so grateful, that I didn't have that type of family situation, because that can form a person's personality and make them do stuff that they didn't really want to do. They just did it because their family did it. Their prior generations did it.
Or even, like what we see with what we talk about with the kids in the juvenile center is like sometimes people are born into bad situations.
Yeah.
And it's not that necessarily their parents are bad, but their parents could have also been born into a situation that was toxic. So now we're talking about generational, generational handed down trauma. And for me, like in my situation, my grandfather, steelworkers guy, he was an alcoholic back in a time when it was normal to have whiskey shots, just sip on some whiskey in the office. My dad grew up with a mother and a father who were both alcoholics that drank and would leave him in the bar or leave him in the car while they were in the bar. And then, my dad drank and then he vacated, and I kind of carried that trauma forward with, now I want to know who my dad was. And this was twisted logic, but it was like, well, if I do the same things he was doing, maybe I'll understand him at least. So I drank, I smoked, I did drugs, all that, thinking that it would connect me with him, and that didn't happen. So back to the kids, though. A lot of these kids make choices just to survive.
Yep.
I made choices, in a sense, to survive what was going on in my head.
Yep.
And, I know these two things are very different, but our medical system, our mental health system, declares substance use disorder in the DSM-5. There's a DSM-6 now. So that's like the diagnostic manual for mental health providers. Substance use disorder is classified as a mental health condition. Then you look at like other health conditions, maybe diabetes, maybe, like an autoimmune condition or something like, and we're punishing people for a health condition in a lot of scenarios.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about it before, where our justice system has been and we'll be talking about this in future episodes too, but it's just like deterrent, right? The legal system's a deterrent, keeps us from reoffending when there's this other thing, punishment. So you have deterrent, punishment, public safety, which is also important, and then just I think our justice system and in general like is leaning towards more rehabilitation.
That's great.
With the recovery pod, with what they do in the juvenile center, like all the services they have in there, the specialty courts, the services outside of the system. So like what people are able to access inside until they come out. There's programs that, like Rob Worsley's got MIC4. There's transitional housing. There's all these different services to help people once they're out, prop them up to keep them away from, because it's a lot of the time the challenge, right? When you have a felony record, it's well, I can work construction or skilled trades, like be a laborer, or I can go back to selling drugs.
Yeah.
So I think that's really challenging too.
Yeah. Yeah. Licensing was, I got, I had multiple state licensing, and that was even a challenge, because when you apply to take the test, they want to know your stuff, and then they look it over and decide whether or not they're going to let you have that license even before you take the testing. I don't know if it's like that anymore, but it was like that as recently as 10, 15 years ago.
I'm not sure. So when I got in trouble my first time, I wanted to be a PT, physical therapist, and called up to Delta, and the advisor told me that I can go to school for it, but I would have problems getting licensed because I would never be able to go into someone's house.
Yeah.
So that was a deterrent for me. And, as far as like insurance, this was a big wake up call to me when I was trying to get life insurance, and I'm like going through the process, and they're like, well, technically, because you have this and this on your record, and they judged me by my past, right?
Yeah.
The things of my past. I have a felony. I was a drug user. Statistically, increase my mortality rate. Statistically, or in general terms. So I'm looking at it like, well, you guys aren't considering the fact that I am literally a health professional as a personal trainer.
Yep.
Like I make health my daily job. I sit on a nonprofit board. There's all these good things about me, but they don't consider any of that. They don't consider X amount of years. They're just like, well, we're not going to insure you. And then the final company I find that will insure me, they're like, we'll insure you for this much at this premium.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
Wow.
I feel like.
Yeah, I had no idea that they did that with life insurance.
It's life insurance. It's try and rent an apartment with a record.
Yeah.
Like, so we want people to be rehabilitated, and it's like, well, let's make it nearly impossible for them to get on their feet.
Yeah.
In terms of our system. Like, I get gun laws. When you have violent offenders, you don't want them to have firearms, right?
Yeah.
But there's some things that, in general, I just feel like we need to, as a society, at least start the conversation. Like, why don't we look at this?
Yeah. Especially when it comes to the felonies, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. I just applied for global reentry because I travel overseas, and anyhow, like a year ago, and I had to go in for an interview. For something that I did 38 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, like
I was like, it was funny because I sat down with this guy for this interview, and he kind of was like looking at the paperwork. He had this funny look on his face, and he called a supervisor over. They just didn't even know what to do with it. They were like, you know, they couldn't even believe, you know, that I was there for the interview, you know,
Right.
that kind of thing. I mean, they didn't say that, you know, they looked it over and then said, yeah, you're good to go, you know, but
They're just like,
they were like, why are you here?
years?
You know?
Yeah, like, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Just like how I get, we as a society, we want public safety and we want all these things, but how long does an individual that's changed their life still have to be impacted by one decision, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
Well,
like,
it wasn't just one decision.
well, and for a lot of people, it can be one decision, or it can
Yeah.
be a lifestyle that they like. I look at my old lifestyle, how I used to live, and it's almost like that's a different person to me.
Yeah,
It was me, and I understand like I'm accountable for what I did. I accept my responsibility for everything, but it's like if I seen that person on the streets right now, I would probably wouldn't even recognize him.
yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I did most of my trouble is that I being a person that was relatively shy. I wouldn't say shy, but I wasn't outspoken. I did a lot of the things that I did for attention. You know, that was, and once I was able to identify that, it took me a while because I still continue to do like crazy things after I had gotten clean, you know, as far as like, you know, high diving and different things like that. It was always kind of an attention seeking, you know,
adrenaline
yeah,
rush. too.
adrenaline rush. And yeah, people would turn around and go, he's crazy. And I liked that. But now I'm 66 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and I had to identify that and go, you know, maybe you better stop that behavior, you know, so,
Yeah.
before you kill yourself.
Right.
You know, so
Well, and I think some of that too, like I've talked with counselors, I've talked with other individuals. For me, it wasn't just the getting high part. It was the whole process from that I was addicted to. It was all right, I gotta get money to get the dope. And then I have to drive to wherever to get it. And it was like this whole ritual of a process. And I found like in my behaviors, I'm very ritualistic. You know, I have routines in place that help me stay productive. I set my clothes out folded for the next day as they're all ready to go. You know, like my mom used to when I was a kid. I have all my clothes ready. I have, you know, all these things in place, and it was the same concept. Like I had to do this in this order for all of my using, right? And it was a rush getting that. I got that adrenaline rush. And just the getting portion. I mean, it can be the same for sometimes it was when I got out of work, hitting the liquor store, be like pulling in there, like, my mouth would start watering, you know, the whole process leading up to it. Just anticipation. And that's when I hear like the behaviors you talk about, like the skydiving and that type of stuff. I think that's kind of the same thing.
yeah.
You know?
Yep.
It's like people in treatment would say, well, it looks like he put down the spoon and picked up the fork. Because in treatment there'd be some guys that would, you know, the first month there they'd put on 10 pounds
Oh, yeah.
because they were chasing the dopamine.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get it from the substance anymore, so they would like, I did the same thing. I was eating triple decker PBJ sandwiches for nighttime snack in rehab.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. No, I can't. I'm trying to remember when I think I came into treatment at 160, and I'm obviously not that. I'm thinking, and I think I know when I came out of jail, I was 240. You know, so
Yeah, I went in 143. Would have been June 22nd, 2016. I went to treatment at 173. So in jail, I put on 30 pounds in 3 months. And then I got to treatment when I
80.
when I left treatment, I was like 210, and I was like, all right, this is for me. I got to change. I want something different. So I got really over the top strict with my nutrition, and it's that obsessive dive into something I'm doing like 1,000%. My nutrition was like naked, nothing on it, chicken. I'd have naked rice and naked broccoli. There's no butter, there's no salt. It was just over the top.
That's how I should be eating right now, to be honest with you. So yeah, especially since you guys know that I had that heart surgery, and I lost 20. I've gained it back, and here we're talking about addiction, and the things that we need to do to stay healthy, not just stop using. You guys see me in the gym, fairly consistent. Not, I do a bit of traveling, so I'm inconsistent. Let's put it that way because of that. But I do a lot of walking, and I've been able to keep the physical part up, but I've got to get back into that eating part, because I have let that get away, and that's how I've been.
It's easy.
It's the hardest. Yeah, it's the hardest part, and the
stay consistent.
The biggest variable, because I know you within reason, right? But I mean, for me, then there's certain things where, I go cheesecake or pie, right?
Cheesecake. Yeah.
Like, I mean, it might as well be a drink or a joint or a line, whatever, because I'm gonna go hard on it.
Yeah,
like pizza.
And I mean, I always think of everybody. All right, there's this many people here. There's these, and I take a small sliver, and I'm watching, and boom, I go back. Next thing, I had 2/3 of that thing.
Yeah,
and it's like, I gotta go a little harder tomorrow.
And in my case, to be honest with you, it feels like life and death. I'm 66 now. I've never felt this way before physically, where if I'm not doing the right things, I can feel myself going downhill. And before this, I didn't feel that, so I could get away with, going up and down, and then say just before softball season in the springtime, running to the gym and working out like crazy and eating just, raw, just chicken with nothing on it for a couple of months and drop that 20 pounds. Right now I'm at that point where, I'm realizing that I can't do that I gotta stay consistent. Doesn't mean that I have been, but I really need to,
And there's always time to make that shift until there isn't, right?
Right.
And then this is the way I see it. My dad died at 47.
Wow. Yeah.
From atherosclerosis. He had a massive heart attack. He had plaque buildup in his arteries, so it caused him to have a massive heart attack.
Yep.
So I've been proactive. I got my coronary artery score. I got, I get my blood work done, because I'm competitive by nature. And even though my grandpa and my dad aren't here, in my head, I'm like, I see Dad was 47. I'm 41 now. I got 6 years and then I beat him. I win. And then my grandpa was 71. So I got a few more years to pass him. But, I want to live longer than what my ancestors did.
Yeah.
That's my goal. And so I think about it like my situation with my family history, like with what you're talking about, I could actually be in that situation, or I could be in my dad's situation sooner if I don't make changes now.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, I think the average, I don't know what the statistics are, but there's usually quite a bit of plaque buildup in anybody in their 60s. So some people are, you know, outliers that have been training their entire lives. But the way I look at it, and in terms of banking, right, finances. So my old lifestyle, I was constantly going to the bank, withdrawing from my future because of my behaviors. And now what I do every day, going to the gym, I eat healthy, I exercise, I do cardio, less than I should, but I do still do cardio.
I'm doing more cardio than both you guys, I think.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. This guy walks like 30 miles a day.
He's been on the afternoon kick, and there's times where he walks just as much as I do, but he runs twice as much in that walking period.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
I can't lift anything anymore, but
Our behaviors now, though, are what we're depositing. It's like investing in our future, right?
yeah.
So, and I like to think that I'm on a net zero at least right now. I might be in the green a little bit from my past behaviors and active addiction to now, where I'm actively like, okay, I've surpassed what I withdrew. Now I'm in the green. I'm in the positives. Like I'm adding years from the 0 point, not the. So,
But there, you know, I found out that, and I think we've talked about this before, that a lot of this was hereditary. I took a test that there's a name for it, lipo something, that shows
apolipoprotein B.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that shows if it's hereditary or not. And mine was. My score was real high, you know. But still, there's things that you can do to help yourself, you know.
Right.
You know, and I've had a lifetime of not eating, you know, that great, you know, and I'm trying to change that.
Well, Will, I appreciate you coming on,
yeah.
sharing, being vulnerable, and even more so leading the way and being like that lighthouse for many of people that come into the, you know, recovery, and they're like, it's a legend right there. I appreciate it because you show that it is possible. So,
Thank you.
I really appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
on. Thank you, everybody who tunes in. Thank you for watching to the end. Thank you for supporting what we do. And don't forget, like, subscribe, share.